drug. Multi-account management is what we're discussing. Gonna show you.
Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here today and discuss multi-account management. Maybe you've already heard about it when we released it at our spring spotlight. But just introductions, I'm Maggie. I'm from our product marketing team, and I focus on our Marketing Hub solution. I'm based in the greater Boston area, and I'll let Mark do a quick intro on his end.
Hey everyone, my name is Mark. I work on the product management team, and I've been helping with the launch of multi-account management. And I'm located, I recently moved to San Diego from Massachusetts, so I've been here for a couple weeks. And I've been at HubSpot for about a year and a half. Before multi-account management, I was working on permissions.
Awesome. So the way we're going to do this session, I have some slides that I'll walk you through in terms of like the build up, why we built multi-account management. But I heard all of you love demos, so we'll definitely make sure to hand it over to Mark so he can actually walk you through what this looks like inside the product. So I'll try to make these slides as interactive as possible. So definitely feel free to comment in the chat. So actually to kick things off in the chat, we'll do a quick poll. How many of you that are existing HubSpot customers, how many separate HubSpot accounts does your organization currently manage? 1, 2, 3, 10, okay. 2.5, 4, 1. Wow, Kyle, you guys were right. The chat does pop off.
I saw 30. I saw 30 plus. I see some big numbers.
Wow. Maybe some of those franchises. Okay. All right. Well, we clearly have some variety here, but just want to make a point. As HubSpot admins, you're probably managing a very complex organizational structure, and you've probably felt the pain of trying to adapt your business to one HubSpot account, or maybe you're already juggling multiple accounts and just feeling that operational burden. So today, we're going to talk about our solution that's hopefully meant to make your lives a bit easier. So good segue. Again, we saw a lot of you managing a different number of accounts. So we know that every org structure is unique. Some have businesses that operate completely separate from one another. They have different business models. Others operate with one centralized marketing org. But regardless, there's common pain points that you're probably all trying to solve for, or at least are aware of. So, and as admins, you're on the front lines of these challenges every day. So curious also like what you see on the screen here. Do these challenges resonate with you? Are there other challenges that, you are actually facing that, you want to see if others can relate as well, which is to kind of go into these a little bit further. So most of you are managing multiple brands, and maybe those multiple brands operate independently. So you're trying to manage different entities that each have their own maybe compliance requirements, their own processes, their own needs. Maybe it's different regions, different business units, or just completely separate brands in your organization. Your teams are doing duplicative work. You watch your marketing teams recreate the same campaigns, the same assets, the same workflows across different parts of the business. And you know that there's a better way. Your teams are missing cross-selling opportunities. So maybe your sales teams come to you asking, why they can't see that a prospect is already a customer in another entity. The data is siloed and there's no easy way to really connect those dots, resulting in, customer relationships feeling incomplete. So you're managing multiple touch points, there's no unified view, and maybe your team's frustrated because, again, they can't see that full customer journey. These challenges come at a cost, and I think you all see the real cost of these challenges every day. Maybe you're fielding requests from frustrated users who can't access the data they need, or you're spending hours maybe manually creating workarounds, just really this organizational complexity that you're dealing with. And I think the data backs up what most businesses are experiencing. We're seeing 71% of companies struggle with fragmented customer data scattered across systems, and 73% can't build excellent personal customer relationships at scale. But here's what really hits home. You're spending your valuable time, again, on these manual workarounds due to operational complexity instead of strategic initiatives that you know and want to be doing. So this is exactly why we built multi-account management. We know you've been forced into that impossible choice, cram everything into one account and deal with the limitations, or manage multiple separate accounts and lose that operational efficiency. So multi-account management eliminates that trade-off. You can now maintain the strict separation your businesses require while unlocking powerful ways to share, collaborate, and grow, all managed from a single unified experience. So with multi-account management, you can gain the control that you need to serve your more complex organization effectively. So we rolled out multi-account management in public beta this past April at our spring spotlight. And with that, we released 3 core capabilities. So from an admin perspective, the one you'll probably most likely admire is what it means for configuring your organization with the ease of setup and the time saved. Today, when setting up multi-account management, you have to have at least one HubSpot account in your organization that has Marketing Hub Enterprise or Customer Platform Enterprise. From this primary account, you can then connect up to 4 additional accounts. And these accounts need to have at least a professional or enterprise subscription for any HubSpot product. So for example, you could connect a Sales Hub Pro account. We're looking down the road, we'll talk about roadmap later, but we're looking down the road to expand that 5 accounts connected to 10, for example. But once you set up your accounts in your organization, you decide how each account connects and collaborates. And Mark will actually get into this in the demo and show you like just how seamless it is to set up. But just to touch on the other 2 features we came out with, data mirroring helps sales teams accelerate cross-sell opportunities. So when a contact exists in multiple accounts, your sales reps can view their activity and their data from other accounts, all in the account that they're working within. So again, helping with that complete view of the customer so that they can actually tailor their outreach accordingly. And third, streamline asset creation for marketing teams with asset copying. So marketing teams can copy forms, lists, email templates between accounts without rebuilding from scratch. So if there's been a successful marketing campaign with one brand and you want to use that for another brand, this can easily be accomplished using asset copying rather than having, again, to start from ground zero. Obviously note that everyone will still have to customize to each brand specific needs, but at least really helps you save that time in creating those assets. So to get a bit more specific before we head into the demo on the problems we're solving, let's just take a look at a few examples. So as an admin, you might say, I need to be able to govern how the accounts in my org connect together and easily manage permissions and settings. So with organization configuration, you can more easily configure data sharing, governance, et cetera, across multiple accounts. A sales rep might say, I want to see if my customer purchased from another business in my organization. And data mirroring will empower them to get that complete view of the customer by easily accessing data about that customer from other accounts, like their latest activities, deals, et cetera, in one place. And then as a marketer, I might say, I waste so much time recreating marketing assets within each account. And this is a perfect job for asset copying, which will copy assets from one account to another. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over to Mark for the demo.
Sounds good. Let me start sharing my screen. Okay, great. It looks like everyone can see this now. So just again, my name is Mark. I work on the product management team. And now we're going to walk through a demo of multi-account management. Before I do, just to reinforce some of the points that Maggie made. When we were thinking about building multi-account management, what we were thinking about is that many of our customers have different entities, such as different brands, and those brands can frequently have substantial differences between them. They might be in different industries, they might have different business models. And when that happens, the customers, what we've seen, need to customize HubSpot more and more for those specific different brands. And when that happens, often trying to achieve that within one HubSpot account can be problematic. And so the right choice can be to have separate HubSpot accounts for the different brands that you have. But in making, oh, that's not good. Sharon says she's not hearing me. Is that just her? Is everyone else hearing me before I?
Yep,
I
we
can
hear
hear
you.
Okay, great, good. I want to make sure before I kept talking that I shouldn't repeat everything that I just said. Okay, great. So when customers then say that the right choice is to have separate HubSpot accounts, which has been something that customers have been able to do for years. Even before multi-account management came to exist, we had several thousand customers that had separate HubSpot accounts. But in making that choice, it comes with two really big trade-offs. The first is that your data is now siloed between the separate HubSpot accounts. So use cases like reporting, cross-selling, they can be pretty challenging. And the other is that it takes more time to manage those separate HubSpot accounts. So it takes time to run a marketing program that you want to recreate another account or manage permissions between the different accounts. Billing is another example of something that becomes challenging in terms of the time spent when you have separate HubSpot accounts. So multi-account management is a solution that has been designed to help with those two challenges, the siloing of data and the time spent managing separate HubSpot accounts. It is a feature that sits on top of your separate HubSpot accounts. So as a customers or partners that work with customers, you purchase separate HubSpot accounts. And then depending on the subscriptions that you've chosen for this customer's organization, you will then gain access to multi-account management. So in order to use multi-account management, you or your customer have to have at least two HubSpot accounts. One of those HubSpot accounts has to have Marketing Hub Enterprise, and then you are able to connect up to 4 additional HubSpot accounts that have any professional or enterprise subscription for any of HubSpot's products. So for example, you could have an organization that has one account with Marketing Hub Enterprise and another that has, say, Sales Hub Pro. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get started with the process to actually use the feature. So in this scenario, I'm logged into one HubSpot account. There's a new navigation section that is called Organization Management, Multi-Account, and you can see the Create Organization button. In order to see this page today, you have to be a user that is a super admin in more than one HubSpot account, which implies that you actually are a multi-account business. And you have to be logged into the portal, the HubSpot account that has Marketing Hub Enterprise. So we go ahead and do the Create Organization process. And what you see here is a list of accounts where I am currently a super admin in those accounts. Today, you are only able to connect accounts into an organization that have the same data hosting location. This is a key constraint that we're working to remove over the next 6 months or so. So the account that you're currently logged into is in the data hosting location of United States East. So what you'll see is that the other accounts are also in that same data hosting location. To be included on this list, they have to have at least a professional subscription, and they can't be a sandbox account. So let's go ahead and say for this scenario, we want to connect Kinetic Labs into my organization. So in this case, I'm an organization that has 2 brands that have 2 separate HubSpot accounts that we're going to create as the organization. Now, as with that, you then have to do a 2-factor authorization, which I'm going to do very quickly. The idea is that creating an organization is a very significant action as a customer because you're now going to start to enable data and assets to flow between these different HubSpot accounts. So it was very important for us that we create a secure solution for our customers when we thought about multi-account management. So I'm going to enter in that code right now. Okay, so now we have created an organization. The next part of the process is to actually turn on multi-account management features for your organization. So let's configure that now. So what you're seeing now is the configuration part of the feature. And on the left-hand side, you can see the accounts that are part of your organization. And then here you can see for each of the relationships, you can see the features of multi-account management. So today we have 2 features. One is data mirroring and the other is asset copying. For each connection that you have between the different accounts, you can choose whether you want the features to work in a 2-way direction or a 1-way direction. So first we'll turn on both of the 2 features. And what 2-way means is that when you have these 2 separate HubSpot accounts, that if you have data mirroring, for example, that data will be shown from one account to the other and vice versa. Or asset copying, that you'll be able to copy an asset from one account to the other and vice versa. If you would like for your organization, we've seen that every customer is different and that some businesses might want to say, I only want to copy an asset from one account to another, or I only want data to be mirrored from one account to the other. In that case, you would switch and use a one-way connection instead of a two-way connection, just to explain what that means. So just to give a brief overview of what these features are, which Maggie already did a little bit before we go into demoing them. So data mirroring allows you to look up the contacts that are shared between the separate HubSpot accounts based off of the emails of the contacts. And then if they're shared, we take some of the data from one account and we make it visible in the contact record of the other account. This allows a use case like a sales rep is interacting with Maggie, who's a contact who's interested in their product. And without having data mirroring, Maggie would, if she's only a user, or sorry, if I'm a sales rep who's only a user in one of those HubSpot accounts, I wouldn't have visibility into maybe Maggie's a customer of the other brand, and I have no visibility into that. And I'm going to walk through how that will actually work. With asset copying, this feature is exactly what it sounds like. You might have, say, like a marketing email in one of your HubSpot accounts, and you're running a marketing program that will reuse some of these assets between the different brands. And before asset copying, you'd have to recreate those assets in each of the HubSpot accounts, which is time consuming. And so now with asset copying, you can just take an asset that already exists in one account and copy it into the other account. So we'll turn on these two features. You'll review the configuration, and now they're turned on. So now what you'll see here is your organization. And what we'll now go through demoing each of the individual features. So first, let's go through data mirroring. Now, because we're in a webinar, we have a little bit of time. I want to just make sure there's one or two things that are clear. In order to use data mirroring as a user, you have to have either a sales or service seat, and you have to have a permission that allows you to view the mirrored data. So we're going to go over to users and teams, and I want to show you what that permission is just so that everyone's aware of it. So if we come into the permissions, so we're going to assign a sales or service seat just for the sake of this demo. We're going to start from scratch. And if we go to the sales section, you'll now see there's a permission called view connected record data. So this permission needs to be turned on for a user for them to be able to view the mirrored data. So now let's actually go look at the mirrored data. So we're going to pop over to contacts. Now, in this scenario, the typical use case that we would think about is that pretend that I'm now a sales rep at one of the brands, and I'm interacting with a contact who reached out to my business that was in a sales process. So we'll say that it's Brian, who's a fake contact, who happens to be shared between the two the two brands that the customer has. So because Brian exists in both of the accounts, you'll now see a new component here that's called Brian is a connected contact. And when I click on this, you'll now start to see data on Brian from the other HubSpot account. And now if you had multiple accounts connected with data mirroring and Brian existed in all those accounts, you would start to see that information shown here. Right now, the information that we have available are the activities, some of the main activities such as notes, calls, emails, meetings, and tasks, as well as the associated deals. So the typical scenario that we have here is that, say, I'm that sales rep, I'm interacting with Brian. I can now see that Brian was recently in a conversation with the other brand from the other HubSpot account. And I can even see that Brian is currently in a sales process to purchase that software. Using this information, you as a sales rep can now have a more tailored conversation with Brian because you have the context of what's going on with Brian across the other brands in your organization. And as I mentioned before, without data mirroring, typically a sales rep is only a user in the HubSpot account that they actually are working in for their brand. So without data mirroring, you typically would just have no visibility into these customer touch points that Brian has with the other brands within your organization. So now let's go ahead and demo asset copying. So for that, we're going to return back to settings. We're going to go to the multi-account section of the feature, and we're going to click on the asset copying tab. So now for this scenario, the typical use case that we have is that I'm a marketer who's running a multi-brand marketing program. And I created some of these assets in one HubSpot account. And now we are going to run this multi-brand marketing program in another HubSpot account. And I don't want to have to recreate all these assets, which is a time-consuming process. So now with asset copying, in only a few seconds, you're able to take some of the assets that you've already created in your current account and copy them to the other account. So you can click the start copying process, at which point you'll select. So in this case, the first step is typically which account would you like to copy into. In this case, there's only 2 accounts in your organization, so there's only 1 account that you can copy into. So you'll first select which types of assets you'd like to copy. Right now, we support 3 types of assets. The first is forms, lists, and marketing emails. So we'll click next. And now what's happening behind the scenes is that we are looking at the other HubSpot account and we're saying for each of these types of assets, what are all of the assets that do not exist in the other HubSpot account that do currently exist in my current account? Further, for each of those assets, we are assessing, do they use any custom properties that don't yet exist in the destination account that do exist in the source account? Because as you go about doing the copy, if, for example, there's a custom property that doesn't exist, we will create that custom property in the destination account as part of the copying process. So in this case, let's just pick a example list that we would like to copy into the other HubSpot account. And what we're seeing here is that this is loading where we're just assessing, do the lists have any custom properties that will have to be created as we go about actually doing the copying process. So we're going to select March customers. We're going to click next, and then we're going to actually go ahead and start the copy process. So this will take a second to actually then appear. And just because the sake of it's a fun demo, I think it'll be cool for us to actually go into the Kinetic Labs account and just show that we've actually proceeded to complete that copy. So I believe we go to lists. So now you can see that we have gone to the other HubSpot account. We're logged into Kinetic Labs now, and that list that was just copied is now here.
We're actually, I think you're sharing a tab.
Got it. We will fix that. Great. So now we pop over here, and I am now logged into Kinetic Labs. I went to the CRM section, and you can now see that the March customers list is here in the other HubSpot account. So that covers everything that we're going to demo for multi-account management right now. I will end with 2 questions that I would pose to the group. I would love to hear from any of the customers on the call that already have separate HubSpot accounts. Have you tried to use multi-account management? If the answer is yes, what was challenging? What could be better? If you haven't started to use multi-account management, why? Have you not known that it existed? Have you not found it to be useful? Any feedback that you have would be really helpful for us as we go into the Q&A afterwards. So Maggie next is going to come back and present a couple more slides before we go into the QA.
Thanks, Mark. I promise just a couple more slides and we'll get to all the amazing questions that you guys are asking. All right, you're probably wondering, is anyone using this feature? Is anyone seeing success? So just wanted to make sure we show some proof here. We have this brand or business Just Right who says, with several portals to manage, multi-account management has been transformative. Instead of recreating distributor emails for each portal, we can copy them across accounts instantly, saving us hours of work. So just great to see multi-account management already having impact on businesses, having just released in April. Okay, so what to expect in terms of capabilities. So we spoke about configuring your organization, viewing customer data across accounts with data mirroring, which again are a sales or service C are required for that capability. And we talked about asset copying as part of what's available today. 2 other major features that we're working on based on feedback that we've gotten from folks like you that we're building this year to help you in the realm of growing revenue are multi-account workflows so that you can automatically identify and act upon cross-account cross-sell opportunities by setting up workflows that update the CRM of another account. So for example, if a contact fills out a form in one account, multi-account workflows could automatically create or edit that contact's record in another connected account. And then we'll have multi-account reporting to understand what's working, what's not working through aggregation and comparison of all your accounts data in one place. All right, so we understand if we go back to the beginning, all of you are managing a different number of businesses. You know, we understand not every business is the same, which is why we offer several solutions based on your unique needs. I saw several questions about, is multi-account management replacing business units? You know, what's going on there? The answer is no, it is going to live as a separate solution. At Spring Spotlight, we also announced the rename of business units to brands. So those of you who leverage HubSpot today with business units probably saw that change apply in your account. You'll notice several places where it says brands instead of business units. And this change, again, is just a name change. There's no shift in functionality whatsoever with business units. It's just simply a new name to better reflect what it actually offers. So just to kind of review our organization management solutions at a glance, we have Teams. So maybe some of you leverage Teams today. It's intended for a company with one brand that has one business model and one CRM. So typically that would be a business with multiple geos or multiple franchises. Businesses can use Teams to stay organized and focused while keeping security and governance at scale. Teams can organize their users into groups with specific permissions, reporting, routing, and notifications. Then we have brands, which is formerly business units, which is intended for marketing teams managing multiple brands with a single business model and a centralized marketing organization. So businesses can use brands to organize multiple brands at scale while being able to share core business data through a single CRM. These businesses are typically looking to organize commonly used assets, subscriptions, reporting, domains, and brand kits by brand. And lastly, we have our new solution, multi-account management, which is meant for businesses who have multiple brands, businesses with different marketing orgs and business models and CRMs, or just a need for strict data separation across those brands. Businesses can organize and execute separately while gaining leverage from sharing assets and data across entities. And these businesses are also looking for centralized management of customer data, of users, and cross-entity prospecting. All right, let's move on to questions. I'll stop sharing.
Great, thank you so much. You are just exactly on time as advertised. I'm really impressed. We have just a mere measly 45 questions in the Q&A. So we'll get through as many as we can, folks. The likelihood we'll get through all of them is pretty much zero. But if there are any questions you've been holding on to or you asked in the chat that we didn't get to, make sure they are over there. Everyone take a minute to just look through the Q&A. If a question you're hoping will be answered is on there, upvote it. We will go most upvoted to least upvoted. So in general, it's more helpful to upvote an existing question than to add a new one to the bottom. But feel free to add one to the bottom if your question legitimately is not there, because I will be exporting these out and sharing them with Maggie and Mark afterwards so their teams can be aware of the questions you all have, which is a useful thing even if we can't answer it live. So I'll give it another like 10, 15 seconds. We should, yeah.
I'm gonna add some music, yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's good enough. All right. We're at 47 questions. The top one. Let's see. I gotta scroll to the top. Most upvoted with 13 upvotes. Matthew asks, "How does this differ from the current business units add-on that a lot of businesses currently pay for?" That question is from 20 minutes ago. So Maggie, I know you had that slide right at the bottom, at the end there. I would love, as you mentioned, lots of people asking questions about business units. Tell us in the chat. Do you have clarity on that now, everybody? Business units, now called brands versus multi-account management. Is there anything else we need to cover there, or are we okay? Let us know in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next question because I feel good about the answer you gave, but we can circle back to it if we need to because that was very, very prominent theme in the chat. Alice asks, "Is it all or nothing, or can I select selected data and assets to sync over?" So maybe.
I think I could answer that.
Yeah,
I could try. And Alice, feel free to clarify the question and just make sure that I understood it well. So first, we could just start with asset copying. So with regards to asset copying, you can select each individual asset that you would like to copy to the other account. It is not all or nothing. You pick the individual assets that you'd like to copy to the other account. For data mirroring, it is currently all or nothing. So how data mirroring works is when you turn on data mirroring between the two separate HubSpot accounts, we look up every contact that exists between the two accounts based off of the email address. And then we make in the account that's the destination, we make that data visible within the contact record. We have heard from a subset of customers a request to be able to control which specific records are mirrored to the other account rather than it being all or nothing, which is an item that we are considering for our roadmap over the next year, I would say. It's not something that's immediately going to change, but it's a reasonable request that we've heard from other customers that we intend to change over time.
And so like, if we think of the Venn diagram of these are the records these two accounts have, data mirroring is just for the segment in the middle, right?
Exactly.
If I'm in this account and I create a new contact record for a contact that exists in this account, as soon as that contact record has existed, the data mirroring kicks in and we can now.
Exactly. How the data mirroring works is that every time you as a person load the contact record page, we check the APIs of the other HubSpot account to see like what's the latest information, basically.
So this is not like a once a day or once an hour sync. Literally every time I load the page, we're going to get up-to-date information. Love that. Aaron asks, just curious, how does data mirroring handle record merge and delete events? These are admin.
So I think the answer is that would just happen, as I was just mentioning, like if you reload the page, we are checking to see, does this record exist in the other account? So if you were to merge the record or delete the record, it changes the definition of that record existing or not. And so that would then impact what data is shown in the other account as a result of that action that you take.
Cool. Lisa asked us in the chat. Lisa, thank you so much for moving it over to the Q&A because I thought it was really interesting. I wonder how many duplicate properties we're going to end up with as a result of the asset copying when the fields are just slightly different. So if I'm copying a list from one to the other, how do we handle property differences?
Yep, that's a great question. So there is definitely a risk that can happen. We have a certain logic that we have for determining whether a property is consistent between two accounts. And the main way that that's done is based off of the internal property name of a property, which is configured as part of the property definition, as well as the property type. Those are the two criteria that are used to say, is the property the same property in the two separate HubSpot accounts, which hopefully will work fairly well of ensuring that you have consistency between them. But certainly that's a challenge that could exist. And we will look for feedback from you all as customers as you start to use the feature of like, this is a problem, I need to look at this more. I will say, like, when you're actually doing the copying process, you can also see which properties are going to be created. And you can say, like, are you happy with that? Do you want to actually proceed with the copy or not? So definitely just use the feature. And as you start doing it, please give us feedback around what's working and not working. And we'd be happy to keep iterating on both how are we matching properties, how you're reviewing the properties you want to copy. We did consider, do you want to allow a copy to happen without the custom property? Like right now we're requiring it. For now, we're proceeding with the requiring of creating the custom properties because what we found is that frequently the asset that you're copying loses its purpose if it doesn't actually have the properties that are used in its definition. But there certainly is an option that we could change that over time and say, like, you could copy an asset, but not copy the properties. So there's a lot of room for changing as we get feedback from customers.
Yeah, that's really interesting. If you think of like a list that is solely comprised of custom properties and you copy it over, you could end up with a list that's just empty.
Yeah, exactly. That was how we thought about it. Yep.
But I mean, I can also imagine if there was some sort of flow like we see in like field mapping in data sync, or even in data imports now, where you can say, this column is named this thing, but what I mean is this one over here.
Yeah, it's something that we've thought about a little bit because some of the other features that we're working on, whether it's workflows, reporting, asset copying, a lot of them have to do with saying what's the similarities and differences between your CRM schema in the different HubSpot accounts.
Yeah. And
we've considered that we might want to eventually have some type of a data mapping experience between the different portals for that type of a use case.
Yeah. Lucilla, who I'm guessing is a partner, asked a question that a lot of partners asked in the chat, which is, how does partner access work with this? If someone has like that partner admin seat or whatever it's called these days, can they set this up?
The current implementation approach is that you have to be an actual super admin in order to create the organization and turn on the multi-account management connections. The feeling for that is that the action that's being taken is a significant security issue that can result in data being shared between the customer's different businesses. And for that reason, we wanted the explicit consent of a customer user in the actual configuration of the feature. That was the way that we've thought about it today, but we will look for feedback from customers as well as the partners as we go about actually proceeding with this to see if it's something that we want to modify over time.
Makes sense. Andrea says, if the data is in all accounts to start with, how would that work? Do we remove from one account? And I think this sort of also implies a question of, if we have architected a single HubSpot account to manage things that should be multiple accounts, what does that transition look like? Do we have recommendations for how we get to this multi-account world if we've been using workarounds up to this point?
Well, that's I follow your second question. I'm not sure how the second question to me is basically around like, how do you handle migrations from one portal, one HubSpot account to multiple HubSpot accounts? What I heard from the first question is kind of a separate question unrelated to that, of just like, so which question is the data migration question more the one we'll want to answer?
Oh, the data migration is my question, and my okay. So like this question was asked a while ago. If all information is in a single account, do we need to remove it? I don't know. If talked about Venn diagrams and stuff. If that answered that, but feel free, share your thoughts.
Okay, so there are many customers today that have one HubSpot account that would like to consider moving to multiple HubSpot accounts. And admittedly, it is a cumbersome process to be able to do so. At this time, we don't have an easy out-of-the-box like migration tool that makes it easy for you to take all of your data and assets from one account and move them to the other HubSpot accounts. The asset copying feature that we're working on is one part of that migration type of scenario. So it will help, you can copy some of the assets from one account to another. And over time that we are investing in that growing. So we will expand the number of assets. We are also expanding the settings that can be migrated. So for example, being able to copy like a permission set from one account to another. But what we don't currently have planned is the ability to actually copy the underlying data itself. Like say, I want to migrate all of the deals that I have in one account to this other HubSpot account. There are some solution partners that HubSpot works with that are worth exploring for the data, for some of the data migration use cases, if you find that HubSpot doesn't have the right ways to do what you need to do. Other than that, it starts to fall back on some of the unfortunate, more manual processes, whether it's exporting things and re-importing them to other accounts, working with solution partners to do some of the more time-consuming tasks that have to be done. We are going to evaluate in the long term, creating more automated tooling to be able to help with those types of migrations. But just being transparent, where we are really focused right now is we have a lot of work to do in involving our multi-account management feature, so that customers who already have separate HubSpot accounts find it valuable and want to be using it and finding a lot of value from it. And that's really where we're focused. Eventually, we'll then focus on how do you help existing customers who want to migrate into multi-account management to do so. But it's just a little bit more of a longer term, and it's a quite complex type of capability to build to have some of that automated migration tooling.
Makes sense. Gaynor asks, can we create leads in one account, then assign them to users in another? Then in this example, could we still report lead progression in the main account? We often run events as a group, so leads are created, then assigned to other business units.
That's a great question. And that ties very well into what's coming with multi-account management for inbound. So what's coming at inbound is that we have two features that we're working on that Maggie shared. The first is multi-account workflows, and the second is multi-account reporting. So what multi-account workflows is going to allow you to do is to create a workflow that will then edit or create contacts in another HubSpot account. So the idea here is that we're solving for the use case that it was just mentioned. And now the term leads was used in practice in the product for our first version. It will be the contact object, not the lead object. But the use case that we were imagining is that you create a contact in one HubSpot account. So a typical way that could be is, say somebody fills out a form and they express interest for, say, like 3 different brands as an example, or say that Maggie's a contact in one account that you and Maggie purchases something from one brand and now is a good cross-sell opportunity for another brand. Or say you just, in that example, you just create a contact but want to create them in the other HubSpot accounts. So before multi-account workflows existed, there was no native ability to take those contacts and move them to the other HubSpot accounts. So customers would do manual CSV exports, they would build custom development solutions. And now what we'll be able to do is you'll be able to create a workflow in the what we'll call the source account, where you then can edit the contacts in the other account and label them as a cross-sell opportunity if they already exist. And if they don't exist, we can create them as a contact in the other account. So that allows this data orchestration between the separate HubSpot accounts. Now, the next feature that we're working on, both of which we'll be releasing as betas by inbound, is called multi-account reporting. So multi-account reporting will allow you to create a custom report that aggregates and compares data between separate HubSpot accounts. So to just tie that use case together, what you would do is you create a multi-account workflow that takes the contacts from one account and places them into the other HubSpot account. You then go run your marketing programs in these separate HubSpot accounts, and then you can create a custom multi-account report that assesses the data on these contacts between the separate HubSpot accounts. So that entire use case, which is really the core data siloing problem that has come from separate HubSpot accounts, is what we are focused on addressing for this inbound milestone.
Sounds cool. Okay, the next few questions are all around pricing.
Okay.
So Shell asks, how does seat count and type function across multiple accounts?
Got it. So today, there is no what we'll call deduplication of seats across HubSpot accounts. So if you have the same user that is in separate HubSpot accounts, they require a seat, you have to pay for each of those seats separately. This is something that we're keeping an eye on as a business for feedback in general, as the company might evaluate changing that over time. We did see, to be transparent, when we analyzed this, it was fewer than about 10% of users in our existing customers that have separate HubSpot accounts exist in multiple HubSpot accounts. Most commonly, it's administrators, operations, and marketing that tend to exist as the same user across separate HubSpot accounts, where it's less common that sales or service users would, because they tend to be more assigned to a specific entity or brand, would exist as separate users in different HubSpot accounts. But that's the answer. So the high level point that I would just say is that multi-account management has no impact on the current pricing model for separate HubSpot accounts. Multi-account management is only available for free if you have more than one HubSpot account where one of those HubSpot accounts has Marketing Hub Enterprise. So that's the general summary of how pricing relates to the multi-account management offering.
That makes sense to me. And it matches my intuitions that data mirroring is more valuable when I am just in this one account and I wouldn't otherwise have any access to that other account, right? Like data mirroring is bringing in that information so I can see it.
Yeah.
So if I'm a seated sales user in just one account, the big value add is I can now see that.
Yeah, and we actually tried to design the solution around that type of a customer approach. The idea was that, so for example, you are able to access the data from the other HubSpot account without having to be a user in the other HubSpot account. And that's how we built that solution for a sales or service user.
Makes sense. I will say, friends listening in, if you have feedback as we go through these couple of pricing questions, drop it into the chat, please. My guess is neither Mark nor Maggie nor the two of them together have the final say on how these tools are priced.
That's correct.
But if you put it in the chat, I will be exporting the chat and it can be shared with the relevant folks. So as you have use cases, if you have ideas or thoughts or requests or pleas or bargains, just drop them all in there. And yeah, they will be part of the record of this event. The next pricing question from Yaniv. The starting point is Marketing Enterprise and a sales/service seat. One would think to start with Sales Hub. So yeah, I don't know if you have more to say about the reason this is Marketing Hub Enterprise and not Enterprise agnostic of Hub.
Sure. So first, I would say that at Spring Spotlight, we launched these two main features, asset copying and data mirroring. Only data mirroring requires the sales or service seat. And we knew that also when you look at inbound with multi-account workflows and multi-account reporting, neither of those features require any seat. They are agnostic to seats. So we had this idea of like, it's not in general, we will deliver functionality for a variety of different user personas over time, was just like something I want to start with. I think the best answer is to be transparent of like what we basically some of the thinking that went into, at least from my perspective, around some of how that pricing point subject happens. So first is that Marketing Hub Enterprise generally has a higher price point than the entry point to enter into Sales Hub Enterprise or Sales Hub Pro, or Sales Hub Enterprise and Service Hub Enterprise, because you can access those packages with just a single seat. And so with that in mind, we were a little bit nervous around the risk of customers, say, purchasing just Sales Hub Enterprise with one seat and maybe then not purchasing, say, Marketing Hub Enterprise. So to start, we wanted to try to ensure that we had the right price point relative to the investment that goes into multi-account management. And so that was one consideration that we have for Marketing Hub Enterprise. When we look towards the future, like when we're looking towards 2026, we do intend to change that over time, where we will look to make multi-account management an enterprise agnostic, to use Kyle's language, offering. But we're trying to figure out how we can have some minimum contract approach across the different portals. So either it's like a certain minimum contract value or like a certain minimum number of seats across, say, like Sales or Service Hub. But we haven't exactly figured it out, and it's a little bit more complex to implement because that's not currently how pricing works at HubSpot. So we're going to think about those things over time. Maggie, is there anything else that you wanted to add that we didn't prepare for this question to think through like the exact right response? I mean, is there anything else that you feel like we should add on that?
No, I'm just thinking back to like putting together positioning and messaging for this capability. And it took me a while to be like, oh, there's different personas that we're definitely catering to with multi-account management. So I think it only makes sense that, starting with our kind of bread and butter solution, and the fact that asset copying obviously speaks to marketers really well, and but having this like plan and approach to expand to the rest of the hubs when we have like these more built out features makes sense as like a business decision.
Okay, and the third and final pricing question in this series of 3 pricing questions, Jennifer asks, what is the timeline for getting this down to Pro and Starter accounts? Most of my clients who have multiple portals are Pro or Starter.
Good question. So as of now, I would say we do not have an intention to allow a starter account to be part of an organization. So let's make sure we differentiate like who is allowed to create the organizations from just accounts that are allowed to be included in the organization. So for now, so keeping in mind, Pro accounts with Pro can be included in the organization, but they don't qualify to actually gain access to multi-account management for your entire organization. You still have to have Marketing Hub Enterprise, and you can't include a starter account in your organization at all. There has been no conversation around allowing a starter account to be included in an organization. So I'm not sure if or when we will do that. We want to encourage customers to have professional or enterprise subscriptions for a capability like multi-account management generally. But then the question becomes, will we allow a business that has, say, like 4 professional HubSpot accounts to be able to access multi-account management? That is still an open point of conversation for next year, I would say. I think generally with the conversations we've had, people all agree that any enterprise subscription should be allowed to activate upon multi-account management, not just Marketing Hub Enterprise. But we're a little less in agreement over whether we would allow a professional only organization to use multi-account management, because it jeopardizes the revenue that HubSpot gains of motivating businesses to have enterprise subscriptions. So when we've talked about having professional only as an option, we've considered, do we want to sell an add-on for multi-account management where rather than upgrading to enterprise, you could say, I want to spend a certain amount per month to use multi-account management for my professional only organization. Those are things that we are considering, but do not have a agreed upon strategy or plan for next year. So I would say for the duration of this year, you should not expect packaging to change. You need to have a HubSpot account that has Marketing Hub Enterprise that can connect up to 4 additional HubSpot accounts with any professional or enterprise subscription.
I'm not watching the chat. I'm over in the Q&A, but I hope you all love what a gem Mark is. This is unflinching transparency at its finest. I really appreciate you, Mark. You're
Maybe too transparent. Who knows?
no, I am here for it.
It's appreciated.
I really love it. Okay, we will fit in a few more questions before we run out of time. Filippo asks, data mirroring only allows you to see the data between the two accounts, but not to be able to move it, correct?
That is exactly correct, and that's quite an important distinction. So with data mirroring, we are not creating data in the other HubSpot account. We are providing a view-only slide out. So you can't edit the data either in the other HubSpot account. It's like Kyle is logged into this account. He's viewing Mark, who's a contact, and you can just see the data from the other HubSpot account, but you can't say build a list with it. You can't build a report with it. Like that data is just in that contact record as the only location where it exists. Now with multi-account workflows, that is the capability that we're working on that will allow you to actually write the data from one HubSpot account into another.
Cool. And Bill asks, are you working on anything to handle email opt-in permissions across accounts for lead sharing?
Yeah, that is a great question, Bill. So with data mirroring, keep in mind, as we're not creating the data, we are only really processing data between the different HubSpot accounts. That does not have the implications around the email subscription management, because so for example, like with data mirroring, you can't create a list of contacts in the other account to then run an email campaign to. However, with multi-account workflows, which is coming at inbound, the subject of opt-ins becomes much more critical. So the idea here is like, say Kyle is a contact in one HubSpot account. We're now going to create Kyle as a contact in the other HubSpot account and then run a marketing email campaign on Kyle in the separate HubSpot account. That is what multi-account workflows will enable, which has some implications around opt-ins. Again, to be transparent, the current initial solution is nothing out of the box, and we are going to put the responsibility on the customer to manage that opt-in. So the way that that typically works is that, say Kyle fills out a form in the first account, we are going to expect that the customer, rather than having an opt-in for just their one account, many customers, what they'll do is they'll have language that's like a global opt-in where it will say like in the customizable text that you have for managing your form, you could say like in submitting this form, I submit my consent to be marketed to by all of the affiliates of HubSpot or whatever, like that type of global consent. And then the idea is that when you create the contact in the other HubSpot account, you're then going to want to have a workflow in the second HubSpot account that will then take that data and manage the email subscriptions for Kyle, this contact in the other HubSpot account. This requires the customer to realize they need to do all these things, which we will explain in a knowledge base article, but I think will be imperfect. We will consider, based off of how this all goes, whether we need to have like a more streamlined global consent, like organization consent tool. It's not something we've really figured out yet. And it would be a pretty large feature for us to figure out how to build. So we don't have like a clear plan for it, but if it becomes a problem, then it is definitely something that we will think to solve as a business.
Great. I'm going to squeeze in one, maybe two more questions. Kylie asks, can you change what property is used to connect a contact? Instead of email, could we use a different unique ID?
Currently, no. We've heard a subset of customers bring that up where, for example, like say they have their own database where they want to have like their own unique identifier for contacts. It's not something that we have immediately on our roadmap just because of the number of customers that it's been relevant for, but it's something that we've heard, and I would say is like it's a reasonable idea for the vision of multi-account management that I would say over like a 2-year basis that I could see us supporting.
Got it. And this will be our last one from Maureen. Maureen, when mirroring CRM data, can we limit via permissions what CRM data would be visible? For example, I want a user from Portal A to see that a contact has engaged with Portal B, but I don't want them to see specific engagements, emails, attachments, etc.
This is another great question. I would say like just for this question, the other question, I think it's important to just know that like this is a first version of multi-account management. It's an early version, and you can expect much more customizability and governance over the longer term. Like right now, the first version is as simple as it can be. It's all or nothing. You get visibility into everything. All of the contacts are mirrored. Yes, there's a permission to control access to the feature at all, but it's still like very all or nothing. So what you can expect is that over the longer term, we're going to build more governance to say, what are the records that we're going to control, what records can even be mirrored into the other HubSpot account. We'll allow more customizability of what data you even want to have mirrored at all. But now when it comes to the question of, can you control if Mark is a user viewing that slide out, can you control what data Mark has visibility into from the other HubSpot account? And this is a hard question for 1 minute. The answer today is no. You only can control, does Mark have the view connected record data permission or not? And then also keep in mind that in order to even access that contact record, Mark has to be given access to view the contact in the destination account. But once you give Mark that access to the contact and the connected record data permission, Mark can then view all of the data from that contact from the source account. Some customers have wanted to have more granularity, which is what this person is asking about, to say, can Mark view these email activities or this deal from the other HubSpot account, which is the type of granular permissions that you can have within one HubSpot account. This is something that we are going to consider, again, I would say on more of like a 12 to 18 month basis. It's definitely something we've talked about extensively, and we expect to be part of the vision of multi-account management. But it's a pretty complicated capability to build, basically, because you have to control all of the granular access from the other HubSpot account.
That makes sense. And that is all the questions we have time for. Mark, thank you. Maybe take a drink of water or something.
They're all good questions. Very good questions. Thank you.
We're going to shut it down here. Maggie, Mark, if people want to get in touch with you, follow up with you, do you like LinkedIn? What's your preferred method for people to follow up?
Either or. I'll put my email in the chat.
Yeah, I'll share my email. I'd be happy to hear any feedback or questions on multi-account management.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to end it here. Have a great Tuesday. Hope to see you all back next week. Maggie, Mark, thanks again for being here. And goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. See you next week.